Everybody, welcome to the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. I'm Jordan Kurtz. I'm also a contributor to the MMA Plug powered by DenverSportsBetting.com as well as MileHighSports.com, so make sure that you give that a look. I have a very special guest in the building right here, Mr. Thick Shady himself. He will be on the Contender series this coming Tuesday. Mr. Cody Brundage, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for taking the time. You know, I know that it's been a long-awaited, bout that you're finally going to be coming up on. Life-changing bout, but, tell us about it.
For sure. So I figured out about this fight right after my last fight in February. I figured out about it in late March, I think, so I've known almost 6 months. Originally, it was supposed to be July, and then with all the craziness, obviously, it got pushed back. But it's been tough, man. Like, I've tried to stay super active in my career. I fought 5 times in the first 10 months of my career, and now I've been sitting on the shelf for 7 months. So that's been rough, but it's given me a lot of opportunity for growth for sure.
Nice. And in the meantime, obviously you made a big life transition. You've moved halfway across the country, coming from Michigan down to Colorado. What does that mean, or what was that experience like?
So it was tough. My gym back home in Michigan, I was super close with everybody there. They were like a family, and it was a hard decision to leave what you're comfortable with and what you've known your whole career. They built me, kind of gave me my base to where I was, and it helped build me up. But it was needed. I think I needed to get somewhere where I was getting pushed every day. I was getting beat consistently, and I had to work to catch those people. I've always been a person that if I'm on cruise control, so to speak, that I won't progress, I won't evolve. So coming here and taking my licks has been huge to get better as a fighter and just become to the next level. This, like you said, this is a life-changing opportunity, so you got to do life-changing shit to make it happen.
Absolutely, man. You said it perfectly there. Now, you have kind of a unique situation going on in that very, very few out there can say that, well, my wife is a UFC veteran. So how does that help you in terms of trying to get yourself there, knowing that your life's partner has already made that walk?
It's a huge benefit to me to have someone who's so supportive. She's like done the whole thing. She's gone through it all. She knows what it takes. She knows the sacrifice it requires better than anyone. So, a lot of times it's a hard life, to be a fighter. It's not an easy road. A lot of people will be like, what the hell are you doing? Go work a job and figure it out. And I've never had to deal with that with her because she knows what I'm doing, what I'm trying to accomplish. She believes in me. So just to have her support and understanding always is huge. And then on the flip side, she's someone I bounce ideas off of. I bounce tons of stuff off of. She's been fighting for, 5 times as long as me, and she's been around the sport for much longer than me, so she just has more knowledge than I do. So, I also get the benefit of having someone who is informed and intelligent in the sport and can help me grow my game that way as well.
Okay. I mean, I can't imagine having a better direct support system than that situation of having someone who literally knows hey, you're going through the the last portion of a weight cut, so sometimes
for sure
the emotions or the feelings or whatever
Absolutely.
might get a little snappy.
Yeah, there's a lot of forgiveness for sure because she knows, and it's the same thing on my end. I know what she's going through, so it helps a lot. And then, man, I'm pumped. She's pregnant right now, and that's a blessing, and we're super excited to welcome our first child in the world. But when she gets back to training, man, it's motivates me because she's probably one of the hardest workers I know, and she's a killer. So I'm excited for her. When we got out here, we moved out here originally for both of us because she was getting UFC offers, and she's right on the cusp of coming back. So I'm telling you, man, we have this child, and she's going to be back in the gym. She's just going to be a monster coming for everybody. So I'm excited for that.
That's awesome. I mean, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Does that add any motivation to your fire on Tuesday night?
For sure, there's definitely added motivation, added pressure too. There's already a lot of pressure with Contender Series. Everyone's like, oh, it's just another fight, and that sounds good to say, but it's not. You're competing to change your life, and I think if you go in there acting like, well, this doesn't really matter that much, then you'll underperform. So, I'm not necessarily putting it on a pedestal, but I do understand what's at stake. You get to provide for your family doing something you love if you are successful. So, there's definitely added motivation, added pressure to provide for my child and for my wife. Like I said, this life isn't easy. You got to pay your dues, and then, this is the ultimate goal so that you can provide and feel good about what you're doing.
Definitely. Being that you mentioned that you're young into your career, so you haven't necessarily had the experience with some of the the bigger regional level promotions that have a little bit more of the whole production end. You got to do that in the in the build up for this Contender Series opportunity. What was the experience like? Getting to go out there. Them whining and dining you, picking you up with with the chauffeur drivers, doing the whole promo reel and workout at the PI, just generating all that sort of content. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was super cool. It's stuff that I can use to build my brand, which is huge in this sport. And yeah, it was nice to be somewhere where they ran everything. I didn't have to say like, well, maybe I'll try doing this. Like they're like, no, here's what you're doing. Here's your schedule. Here's your structure. And it was just nice. I've done promotions, like promotional work for promotions back home, and they do a great job, but it's more of like you figure out what you want to do, and then we'll film it, and so then that's kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. But it was cool. I'm excited. It's interesting because you're watching. I watch all the fights, right? So every Saturday I'm watching these guys fight, and they're fighting in the same cage. I'm gonna be fighting in the same venue. So yeah, it's neat. It's I don't know, it's crazy to think, man. When I was 18 years old telling everybody I'm gonna be fighting for the UFC. I'm gonna make it to the UFC, and where I'm from, like that's just not a thing people do, right? Like not anything bad. They go to school, they work the 9 to 5, and that's what they do. And I told them, I'm like, hey man, I think I'm gonna do this. Like that sounds cool to say at the party, but you're not really doing this. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna make it happen. And so to be right at the cusp of that and like see how much of a different level it is cool for sure.
So you mentioned having that vision of wanting to to be a UFC fighter for a long time. You were a college wrestler. Was that something that you've seen from even when you were a kid, or did it start around that time?
I think I've been watching fights since I was like 16 years old, and like really paying attention to the sport since then. But I think once I wrestled in college, I knew like I could outwork a lot of people. And then I had at the college I went to, Cody Brundage went to my college, and Corey Anderson went to my college, and we just had guys that were going on and being successful, and we were a small school, but we had guys that were going on and being successful at that level, and I'm like, there's no reason I can't do this. I can make it happen. I've been an athlete all my life, and then you mix that with the wrestling. It's a good combo to excel quickly, So I thought I could. Being there is kind of surreal. It's like, oh wow, I'm actually like on the doorstep to do it. But I always thought like, yeah, I'll get there. I'll make it happen for sure.
Being that you're a rather large human being, how much do you feel that having that solid wrestling base is in terms of your overall foundation as a fighter?
I think wrestling is probably I'm not going to get in the argument of like what's the best martial art, but I think in terms of what's the best base to start with, I think wrestling is probably the strongest base, just because it can bail you out of so many situations. If I get clipped or I get hurt or I'm tired, I can always fall back on my wrestling, and I think it's a harder thing to pick up when you're older. So yeah, it's huge. I think I can out wrestle 95% of the people in the UFC right now. If it came down to a wrestling match, I think I'm all set there. So on the regional scene, it's amplified even more. So yeah, wrestling's been huge for me, and it sets up a lot of my other stuff. Everyone has to worry about my wrestling. You have to respect it going in, so it allows me to be successful in other areas of MMA.
Definitely. Do you believe that wrestling is going to be something that will continue to be a major part of your, or like being that you're so young, sometimes it's a matter of you may have that solid base, like look at a guy like a Justin Gaethje, like early on in his career, again, a collegiate wrestler, used a lot of his wrestling early on, but as his career progressed, he's kind of went away from it and just used it as a defensive mechanism, if you will.
Yeah.
How do you foresee that in the future? Are you a guy that like my wrestling is my bread and butter?
Yeah,
I'm good at it.
I think my wrestling will always be my bread and butter. I think like with Gaethje, he's been in the sport so long, like you said, he's been able to develop his striking and his game plan. And I'm not saying that can never happen, but the one thing I don't want to do, and I see people do too often, is they're a really successful wrestler and they fall in love with their hands and then they forget about their wrestling, and you see them take some losses that they shouldn't necessarily take. Like Aaron Pico. That guy's a stud. He's one of the best wrestlers in the sport. And then he's taken some losses because he fell in love with his hands and didn't fall back on what he knows. Same with DC. DC's fighting Stipe, and I know it's hard to take him down, but he's an Olympic level wrestler. He can take him down. He can win the wrestling exchanges, but you forget about your roots, and then sometimes it can cost you. So I don't ever want to be that guy. Obviously, I want to become more well-rounded. I'm working at it, and since I've gotten the sport, I've really made leaps and bounds with my striking, but my wrestling's always going to be, I've been striking for less than 3 years, and I've been wrestling for 20, so I'm always going to have, wrestling's always going to be my go-to, because, it's just time put in, so I'll always feel more confident falling back on that. But yeah, it is cool to see guys like Gaethje who can defensively wrestle and put it on you on the feet, so, that's obviously the goal to get to that point, but for now and for the future that I see, wrestling's going to be my thing, I think.
Understandable. Cody, what is something about yourself that somebody might not know? Something unique, maybe a funny story, something like that.
Something unique about me. So my first two, I'm like we said, I'm a pretty successful wrestler. I took top 12 in the country in college twice. I was pretty good, but my first 2 years of wrestling, I never won a match. I was like 0-30. Got smashed. Little Cody was getting killed, and I was like, Dad, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this sport anymore. I love sports. I did all kinds of sports growing up, super athletic, but I was like, Dad, I'm done with this. I'm not having success. I hate it, and he wouldn't let me quit. And then, now I'm where I'm at with it. So, if I had quit that, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at now. So yeah, people think they're always like, man, you're such a good wrestler. You've just been killing it, forever. I'm like, no. I was really bad, really bad in the beginning, and even through high school, I wasn't recruited very heavily at all. I took second in the state in South Carolina, which isn't a big wrestling state. We're not known for our wrestling. I went to a college that was top 10 consistently in Division II, and they were kind of a powerhouse at the time. And then my first 2 years, I had a losing record. I never started. I never saw the lineup, and just busted my ass and finally made it happen. But it hasn't always been success story, with the sport I've chose. So that's kind of something probably people wouldn't expect. If we get out here and roll, you're probably not going to think that I was a guy who had a lot of struggles with it, but I have for sure.
5 years from now, where do you see yourself? 5
years from now, hopefully, doing my thing in the UFC on that third, fourth contract. Coach always says you're not making the money until you get the third, fourth contract. So hopefully I'm there. And, I want to, it's cool being around Anthony Smith here because he's kind of taken the route that I want to take. I want to get into the commentating. I want to get into, the podcast and the radio shows and that sort of thing. That's always been a passion of mine for all sports. Just the broadcasting has been something I've really, really enjoyed. And I've got to, through college and high school, I shadowed a lot of broadcasting booths and gone to play-by-play places just because I enjoy it. And I think there's not a ton, this is going to sound bad, but I don't think there's a ton of well-spoken people in our sport. Fortunately, at Factory X, we have a lot of them. So, it's cool to be around them. But, I think there's a real avenue to excel and kind of get a leg up in that aspect. And then that's how you make a career. Fighting it can be a career, but it's going to be tough. I don't want to fight till I'm 40. I don't want to be fighting and taking brain damage that long. So to make a career, you have to be successful, and then you have to parlay that into something else, which you've seen guys like Anthony and Dominic Cruz and DC be able to do. So that's what I would like to do. Still be around the sport, still train, and then take my skills to the broadcast booth. Less CTE, less brain damage for sure.
Totally. Yeah, well, he just happened to be talking to one of the right guys for those sort of gigs with all the different promotions out around here.
For sure, yeah.
Which, by the way, make sure when shows come back, check me out, Colorado Combat Club, No Mercy Extreme Fighting, and Fury Fighting Championship.
Oh, man.
we got to throw the plugs in there. So, just real quick to wrap it up, Cody, is there anything that you want to say, one last throw out to the fans?
Yeah. No, I'm just excited. I think everyone always says, it sounds so cliche, like you're going to see a different animal this fight, you're going to see a different fighter, or, and normally I think it's kind of corny to do that, but like I said, it's been 7 months. I've been here for a full camp. I moved out here at elevation for 11 weeks, and I think it's gonna be a different guy in there. You see, and I think people here have seen it. From my first week to where I'm at now, it's just a different fighter. So I'm excited to showcase that and like show my new tools, in the tool belt. Really, just tune in. It's gonna be a fun fight.
So real quick, where can people follow you?
Cody_Brundage_ on Instagram, Cody Brundage MMA fighter on Facebook, and then Cody Brundage 1 on Twitter. Get at me.
Awesome. Anybody that you want to thank?
My long-term sponsors, I got Go Cleveland Productions, Will Finn out of there, and then law offices at Timothy P. McDonald. They've been with me since my amateur days, so they've really helped me through this camp, not worry about it financially. This is the first camp that I trained full-time. Typically, I worked a full job and then would train, but I went all in on this camp, and they really helped me to kind of not have to worry too much about my bills and stuff, so I appreciate those guys. And then obviously my agency over at Iridium Sports, and then Factory X, getting me ready, getting me right. I appreciate all my teammates, and they've really welcomed me here. I can't really say enough about it, but it's been like a family. I'm really appreciative of that too, so yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you check Cody out this Tuesday night on ESPN Plus, Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. This is Jordan Kurtz with comments from the Peanut Gallery, signing out.